Welcome to the deep dive. We've got some really interesting stuff to look at today. You sent in a psychology textbook, a personal note, and even some real-world stories. So we'll be diving deep into all of those. Social psychology, how it all works in our lives, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to have all these different perspectives. Research, personal experience, and real-world examples. It really paints a more complete picture.
Definitely, like getting a 3D view of the whole thing. Okay, so the textbook. It talks about these things called social traps. They use the example of whale hunters. They all know if they take too many whales, there won't be any left. But each hunter wants to take as much as they can.
Right, like trapped in a cycle of self-interest. And it's not just about whales. This happens all the time. Pollution, resources, we see it everywhere. It's easy to think my little bit won't make a difference, but then everyone thinks that way.
So how do we get out of these traps? If we're all kind of hardwired to look out for ourselves, how do we make choices that are good for everyone?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
One thing is to really think about the long-term consequences. It's like investing. You could spend all your money now, or you could save some for the future. And another thing is cooperation, people working together towards the same goals.
Makes sense. But working together isn't always easy, especially when there's conflict. The book mentions this thing, mirror image perceptions. When two sides are fighting, they both think they're the good guys and the other side are the bad guys, even if they're doing the same things.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? We like to think we're rational, but when we get emotional, it's easy to see things in a distorted way. We assume the other side has bad intentions.
Oh yeah, totally. Like those arguments where you're both so sure you're right. You're basically saying the same thing to some different angles.
Exactly. And the more stuck we get in those perceptions, the harder it is to find common ground and resolve anything. So how do we break free? One way is to just have more contact between the groups. When people interact on a personal level, they start to see each other as individuals.
It's like, don't judge a book by its cover. You get to know someone, you realize they're more complex than you thought.
Right. And another thing is to find those superordinate goals the book talks about, goals that both sides can only achieve by working together.
Like what? Can you give an example?
Sure, imagine two groups that always fight, maybe over politics or culture. Suddenly, there's a shared threat, a natural disaster or a huge economic crisis. They'd have to put their differences aside to survive.
I see. The goal of survival overrides the conflict. The book mentions this experiment, Sharif's Robbers Cave experiment. Sounds crazy. They divided these boys into two groups, had them compete against each other. They became rivals, name-calling the whole thing.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
Then, the researchers introduced these shared goals, like fixing a broken water pipe or pushing a truck that was stuck, and their rivalry disappeared as they worked together.
It really shows you the power of shared goals to bridge divides. Even really deep conflicts can be overcome when people work together towards something they all care about.
So it sounds like our behavior is influenced by like a mix of individual stuff and social forces. Not always easy to see, but if we can recognize them, it can help us make better choices.
Definitely. And it leads us to this next topic the book talks about, the unconscious mind. This is where things get really interesting. All the mental stuff that happens below the surface.
Okay, the unconscious mind. This is where it gets a little mysterious. So the book says a lot of our mental activity happens outside of our awareness, like an iceberg. Only the tip is visible.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. The conscious mind is just the tip, and most of our mental activity is hidden. It affects our thoughts and feelings without us realizing it.
It makes me think about those split-brain patients, where their brains are surgically separated. Sometimes they do things that they can't explain, as if one hand has a mind of its own.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it? It really shows that there are things happening in our minds that we're not aware of.
Makes you wonder what else is going on in there.
Definitely. It's a huge and complex area. The book focuses on one aspect, defense mechanisms. These are strategies our mind uses to protect us from anxiety and stuff. It talks about reaction formation and projection.
Okay, what are those exactly? Reaction formation sounds familiar, but I don't remember. Oh, the book mentions that study with the men who were really anti-gay. But then they showed more physiological arousal when they watched videos of homosexual men. How does that even make sense?
Right. It seems like a contradiction. But that's what reaction formation is all about. You turn unacceptable impulses into their opposites. So their outward hostility could actually be masking some unconscious attraction or curiosity.
So they're overcompensating for something they don't even realize.
Exactly. And it's not just about sexuality. It can be anything. Being overly nice to someone you secretly dislike.
Right.
or becoming a big advocate for something you used to oppose. It's a way to keep those uncomfortable thoughts and feelings buried.
Wow, that's fascinating. It
That
makes you wonder how much of what we believe or how we act is because of reaction formation.
definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
Now, projection. That's when you attribute your own bad traits or impulses to other people. It's like that saying, when you point a finger at someone, there are three fingers pointing back at you.
So instead of admitting those traits in ourselves, we put them onto others. I guess it's easier to criticize others than face our own flaws.
Yeah, it's a way to protect our ego. But it can cause problems in relationships because you're not seeing the other person clearly. You're seeing them through the lens of your own projections.
This all ties in really well with that personal note you mentioned before, the one about choosing a child. It's so heartfelt, and it really shows the importance of self-concept. The way they talk about their child, it's clear they see them as this perfect individual.
Absolutely. It's unconditional love. And it speaks to how powerful self-concept is, how it shapes how we see things. The writer's positive self-concept allows them to see their child with love and acceptance, not judgment.
It's like that self-fulfilling prophecy thing. If you believe in someone, see their potential, they're more likely to live up to it. And the same for ourselves. If we have a good self-image, we're more likely to achieve our goals.
That's a great point. And it leads us into the next topic from the textbook, personality.
Right, personality. What makes each of us unique? The book talks about the big five personality traits: conscientiousness, agreeableness, all those. I remember those from my intro to psych class, but the book goes even further. They talk about this huge study with over 1.25 million people.
Yeah, that study found that these personality traits are pretty stable over time. So the core of who we are, our tendencies, those tend to stay pretty consistent throughout our lives.
So we're not just products of our experiences, there's a core us that stays the same.
It seems that way. Our experiences definitely shape us, but there's a fundamental part of us that stays pretty constant. It doesn't mean we can't change or grow, though. Our personalities can still adapt, like how a river changes based on the land around it.
I like that analogy.
Hmm.
It shows that personality is dynamic, not just fixed. But if it's so ingrained, are there limits to how much we can change?
That's a tough question. Even though our core traits might stay relatively stable, it doesn't mean we're stuck. We can still change based on what we experience in life. It's like, it's like the river analogy again. The river's flow changes based on the shape of the riverbed.
So we're not just defined by our past or our personality. There's always room to change.
Definitely. We can shape our own lives to some extent. We can work on the parts of our personalities that we want to improve and, manage the parts that might be holding us back. It's a journey.
That's a good way to put it. It makes me think about that other concept from the book, the social clock. The idea that there are these expectations about when we should do certain things in life. Getting married, having kids, that kind of stuff.
Right. It's like this invisible timetable that can make us feel pressured. We might feel like we have to conform to these expectations, even if they don't fit with what we really want.
Yeah, I get that. Especially with career goals. Sometimes I feel like everyone else is doing amazing things, and I'm still trying to figure things out.
It's really common, especially these days. It's important to be aware of those societal pressures, to question if they really match up with what you want for yourself. It's your life. You should be the one in control, not just following some predetermined path.
That's a really good point. It's about making our own choices, not just doing what's expected. But that's easier said than done, right? How do we break free from those pressures and define what success means for ourselves?
It starts with knowing yourself. You need to figure out what expectations are weighing you down and ask yourself, are these really mine or are they coming from somewhere else? Once you separate those external pressures from your own desires, you can start making choices that are true to yourself.
Okay, that makes sense. It reminds me of how important it is to have a strong sense of self. Which brings us to something a bit more sensitive: mental well-being and psychological disorders. The textbook talks about those too.
Yeah, that's an important topic. We need to approach it with empathy and understanding. Mental health disorders are real. They're common, and they can have a huge impact on people's lives. The textbook does a good job of showing the human side of these conditions, using personal stories and research.
There's this quote from someone talking about their experience with depression. They said, "It felt like being trapped in a dark tunnel with no way out." Reading those personal accounts really makes you understand what it's like to live with these conditions.
Yeah, they give you a glimpse into their world. They remind us that there are real people behind the labels. It's about understanding, not judging.
The book talks about the biopsychosocial model. You know, how biology, psychology, and social stuff all interact and affect our mental well-being.
It's a much more holistic way of looking at it. It recognizes that our mental health is influenced by so many things: our genes, brain chemistry, our upbringing, social connections, and even our culture.
Right, it's not just one thing. The book mentions the depressed brain, genetic factors in schizophrenia, and the effects of stress.
All of that shows the complex connections between our biology, our experiences, and our mental health. Like, research has found that chronic stress can actually change the structure and function of our brains, making us more susceptible to depression and anxiety.
Wow, that's incredible and kind of scary. It makes you realize how important it is to manage stress.
Absolutely. Our mental health is just as important as our physical health.
The book also talks about how resilient people can be, even after going through trauma. Like the people
Mhm.
in New York after 9/11, they experienced something horrific, but so many of them showed incredible strength and resilience. They supported each other and rebuilt their communities.
It's a great example of the strength of the human spirit. It shows that trauma doesn't always lead to permanent damage.
Yeah, even in the darkest times, there's hope for healing and growth.
Absolutely. We have this amazing ability to cope and even grow from difficult experiences.
This all reminds me of that note about choosing a child. That kind of unconditional love can be so powerful in helping people be more resilient.
It's so true. Having people in our lives who love and accept us no matter what can help us cope with stress and adversity.
So it seems like fostering good mental health is about more than just treating people who are struggling. It's about creating a society that supports everyone's well-being.
Exactly. It's not just an individual responsibility, it's a collective one. We all have a role to play in building communities that support mental health.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the textbook and the personal note. Let's shift gears and look at those real-world examples you mentioned. You said something about religious beliefs and giving to charity. Tell me more about that.
Oh, yeah. This is where we can see how social factors play out in real life. Research has found this interesting link between being religious and charitable giving.
Really? I'm curious. Tell me more.
So Gallup did these polls between 2006 and 2008. They surveyed a ton of people, over 300,000, in 140 countries. They found that people who are very religious, religion is important to them, they go to services regularly, they were about 50% more likely to donate to charity and volunteer compared to people who weren't as religious.
Wow, that's interesting. It seems like religious belief can be a strong motivator for helping others. It kind of challenges some of the stereotypes about religious people.
For sure. It reminds us that we shouldn't make assumptions about entire groups of people. There's always more to the story.
Speaking of helping others, you also mentioned a real-life hero, Wesley Autry, the subway hero. What's his story?
Oh man, Wesley Autry's story is amazing. Back in 2007, he saw this guy having a seizure on a subway platform in New York. The guy fell onto the tracks. Without even thinking, Autry jumped down onto the tracks too and shielded the guy with his own body as a train was coming. They both survived. And later, Autry said he didn't think he did anything special. He just saw someone who needed help.
Wow, that's incredible. It's a real-life example of someone putting their own life at risk to help a stranger. Kind of gives you hope, you know?
It really shows you the potential for kindness and compassion that we all have.
You also mentioned a situation where someone didn't get help. What happened there?
This was actually a few years after Autry's heroic act. Another guy in New York was pushed onto the subway tracks, but this time nobody helped them. People just stood there and watched as a train hit him.
Oh, that's so sad. What makes the difference in those situations? Why do some people help while others just stand by?
Social psychologists have been trying to figure that out for a long time. They've done a bunch of experiments to see what encourages helping behavior and what discourages it.
It's like all that stuff we were talking about before, conflict and cooperation, all those social dynamics.
Exactly. It's complicated. To understand human behavior, you have to consider people's motivations, social pressures, and the specifics of the situation.
Okay, so, wow, we've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive. We've talked about social traps, the unconscious mind, mental health, and even heroism and the bystander effect.
Yeah, we have, and it's been really interesting.
It has. We'll take a break here, but we'll be back soon to dive even deeper into these topics.
I can't wait. It's crazy how those two subway situations turned out so differently. One guy's a hero, the other, nobody even tries to help. Makes you think, like, what makes the difference?
Right. Why would someone like Wesley Autry risk his life for a stranger, while in that other case, everyone just stood there? Is it like a personality thing? Are some people just born heroes?
Well, personality is definitely part of it, but it's not that simple. The textbook mentions this thing, diffusion of responsibility. Maybe that's what happened in that second subway situation.
Diffusion of responsibility, huh?
Yeah.
That's a new one. What's that about?
So the idea is when there's a bunch of people around during an emergency, each person feels less responsible for doing something. They figure, oh, someone else will handle it.
I get it. Like group projects in school. Some people just slack off, thinking others will do the work.
Exactly. When there's a crowd, you feel anonymous. You don't feel obligated to act.
So maybe those people on the subway thought, someone else will call 911 or someone closer to the guy will help.
It's definitely possible. And it's not just a guess. There's research on this. There's this classic study where they made people think they were talking to others over an intercom. Some thought they were the only one who could hear an emergency, while others thought there were lots of people listening.
Oh, wow. So what happened?
The people who thought they were the only one who could help, were way more likely to actually do something. The others, the ones who thought other people could help too, they were less likely to act. It's like having other people around makes us less likely to help, even when it's super important.
That's kind of scary. It means that even if we want to help, we might not, just because of the people around us.
It shows how important it is to really be aware of this. We need to make a conscious choice to act, even if it feels weird or awkward. We can't just assume someone else will take care of it.
That's a good reminder. We have a responsibility to look out for each other. And sometimes doing the right thing means overcoming our own hesitation and, social pressures. Our actions or inaction can have real consequences.
For sure, we can't expect others to always do the right thing. Sometimes we have to be the ones to step up, even if it means standing out.
Okay, so this deep dive has been pretty intense so far. Social traps, the unconscious mind, mental health, the bystander effect. It's a lot. But I think it's important to remember that we're not helpless.
Definitely not. One of the biggest things to take away from all this is that we have the power to choose. We can change our minds, question our beliefs, learn, grow, and make the world a better place.
I like that. It reminds me of something you said earlier, that making the world a better place is the best way to prevent mental health issues.
Oh yeah, that quote. It basically says that making a world where everyone feels valued and supported is the best way to prevent psychological problems.
It's like, instead of just fixing people who are already struggling, we create a world where everyone has the chance to thrive.
Exactly. It means that mental health is tied to things like social justice, economic equality, and the environment. It's about creating a world where everyone can flourish.
That's a beautiful idea. It makes you think about all the ways we can contribute to making the world a better place, not just big dramatic actions, but everyday things. Being kind, compassionate, being responsible members of society.
It's like even small acts can have a ripple effect. If everyone does their part, we can create a world that's more just, caring, and sustainable.
That's really hopeful. It reminds us to stay optimistic and remember that we're all connected.
Totally. We're all in this together, working towards a better future.
We've talked about so much today. We started with social psychology, delved into the unconscious mind, and ended with this vision of a better world.
And we used all those sources you sent in, the psychology textbook, that personal note, and all those real-life stories.
It's amazing how these different pieces can fit together and give us such a deep understanding of what it means to be human.
It shows the power of looking at things from different angles.
I agree. So, before we move on, what are the biggest things you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
I hope they have a better understanding of all the things that influence our thoughts and actions. I hope they feel inspired to challenge their own ideas and see things from new perspectives. And most importantly, I hope they feel empowered to make a difference in their own lives and in the world.
That's a great way to put it. And I hope they've enjoyed our conversation. Learning about psychology doesn't have to be boring. It can be fun and exciting.
Definitely. There's always more to learn, and it's a lifelong journey.
All right, so one last thing before we go. If improving the human condition is the best way to prevent mental health problems, what can you do to make a difference? Think about it. What can you do to support well-being in your own life and the lives of those around you? It's something to really consider.
That's a fantastic question to end on. It's a call to action. We can all do something to create a better world.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive. It's been a wild ride going through all these amazing sources you sent in. We talked about those social traps, the unconscious mind, and even how working together can help overcome conflict.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground. And we saw how all these psychology ideas actually play out in the real world, like from those heroic acts to the bystander effect.
Totally. It's crazy how these theoretical concepts can have such a huge impact on our lives in the world. But before we wrap up, there's one more thing for the psychology book that I want to talk about. Preventive mental health.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's all about shifting our focus. Instead of just treating mental health problems after they happen, we try to prevent them from happening in the first place.
So instead of just putting out fires, we're trying to stop the fires from starting.
Exactly. It's like imagine you're rescuing people from a river, right? You got to save the people who are already drowning. But wouldn't it be even better to figure out why they're falling in the river to begin with?
That's a really good way to put it. It's about getting to the root of the problem,
Hmm.
not just dealing with the symptoms.
Right. So with preventive mental health, you're not just focused on individual therapy or medication. You look at all the social, environmental, even systemic things that can impact someone's well-being.
So what kind of things are we talking about? What does going upstream actually look like?
Well, one example is schools. Creating school environments that are really supportive and help kids develop social and emotional skills. Programs that teach them how to handle stress, build relationships, and be resilient. And another thing is policies that help people balance work and life and reduce financial stress. Those things can really contribute to mental health issues.
That makes sense. It's like we always talk about preventing physical health problems, eating healthy, exercising, going to the doctor. It seems like we should do the same for mental health.
Absolutely. We need to talk about mental health more openly and create a culture where people feel okay asking for help when they need it. No shame or stigma attached.
Right, right. And it's not just about what individuals do, is it? It seems like changing the system is a big part of this too.
It totally is. Remember that quote we talked about how improving the human condition is the ultimate form of preventive mental health. It's like saying that our mental well-being is tied to how well our communities and society are doing as a whole.
So creating a world that's fair and just isn't just about social progress, it's about mental health too.
Exactly. When we tackle issues like poverty, discrimination, and climate change, we're not just improving people's living conditions, we're creating an environment that's more supportive of mental well-being.
That's a really important connection. It shows that taking care of our mental health isn't just a personal responsibility, it's something we do together as a society.
Exactly. We're all in this together. We all have a part to play in creating a world where everyone can thrive.
Well, this deep dive has been absolutely incredible. We've gone from those tricky social traps to the idea of preventing mental health issues before they even start.
And we did it all using these awesome sources you shared with us, that psychology textbook, that personal note, all those real world stories. They all came together in this amazing way.
It's always so cool to see how all these different pieces fit together to give us this richer understanding of the human experience.
It just shows you that learning and growing never really stops.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as we wrap up this deep dive, a huge thank you for sharing these incredible sources with us. It's been a real joy to explore them with you.
The feeling is mutual.
And to you, our amazing listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you learned some cool new things and maybe even had a few light bulb moments along the way.
Yeah, and keep in mind, the journey of learning and self-discovery never really ends. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep seeking out new knowledge.
And never forget, you have the power to make a positive impact on your life and the world around you. So until next time, keep diving deep.